This party changed my life. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd go to a swinger party. Like never. But then, of course, my friend Chloe happened. Chloe, if you don't know her, is the type of person who gets ideas like, let's go skydiving, while she's still wearing her pajamas and holding a cup of coffee in one hand. So, there I was, standing in front of the door to an anonymous house on the outskirts of town, my heels clicking on the concrete path like I was about to get led to some sort of dungeon. Which, by the way, Chloe assured me wasn't the vibe. I wasn't entirely convinced, though. It was dark, it was quiet, and the only thing I could hear was the thudding of my heart in my ears. Chloe, of course, was all confidence, bouncing up to the door like she was about to knock on a friend's house for tea. "Relax," she said, glancing over her shoulder at my white-knuckled grip on the purse strap. "It's just a group of people who like to get to know each other a little better. In a fun, no-pressure kind of way." Yeah, that didn't help much. I tried to picture the fun, no-pressure way of things, and all I got was a mental image of awkward and very, very confused. But to her credit, Chloe knew what she was doing. She'd been to these things before, and she was really good at making people feel comfortable, no matter how wild the situation. So, when the door swung open and the host greeted us with a warm smile and a glass of champagne, I didn't immediately turn on my heel and sprint out of there. But trust me, the thought crossed my mind. Inside, the atmosphere wasn't what I expected. Instead of a free-for-all chaos, it was actually kind of elegant. There were little groups of people laughing in quiet corners, chatting over drinks, and the music was just chill enough to make you feel like you were at an upscale lounge. A little scandalous, yes, but no one was acting like they'd just stepped off the cover of some adult magazine. I was surprised, to say the least. Chloe led me to the bar where a couple of people were already hanging out. A man in a nice suit, I'm talking Italian designer here, like he was straight out of a catalog, smiled at us as we approached, and Chloe immediately launched into small talk. Me. I was trying to keep my composure. I mean, let's be real. I was probably sweating like I was about to have an interview with the CEO of some Fortune 500 company. But here I was, surrounded by people who looked like they'd done this 1,000 times. And then there was me, awkwardly clutching my glass of wine like it was my lifeline. As the night went on, though, I realized it wasn't all that bad. People were friendly, there was no pressure to do anything, and surprise, surprise, I actually had fun. Everyone was just there to enjoy themselves and meet other people who shared a certain interest. I wasn't exactly jumping into the deep end just yet, but I had a few good conversations, some flirty banter, and, okay, maybe a couple of slightly more suggestive comments that made me flush more than I'd like to admit. But honestly, it felt like a normal party, just with a little extra spice. By the end of the night, I was feeling a little less like a deer caught in headlights, and a little more like someone who just accidentally joined a secret club. It wasn't as wild as I'd expected. In fact, I left feeling like I could totally handle it next time. And then, well, I did go back. The second time was a little more relaxed. I knew the drill by then. I had a glass of champagne, I mingled, and I realized that the whole no-pressure thing was kind of true. It wasn't like everyone was just out to hit on each other. There was something more laid back about it. People were there to have fun, meet like-minded folks, and if something developed, great. If not, no big deal. I'll admit, by the third time, I'd even gone as far as to enjoy it. Sure, it was still weird at times, but it didn't feel wrong, and that was probably the most important thing for me. But then came the fourth time. The one I remember so clearly. And that's when things changed. It was a Sunday evening. I'd had a hell of a week at work and was just looking forward to a quiet night. Chloe had other plans. "Come on, girl, it's gonna be fun," she insisted, and let's be honest, I was tired. Too tired to say no. I told myself I'd just go for an hour or so and leave early. That was the plan. But you know how it goes. Plans never work out. I remember leaving my apartment and just having this weird, nagging feeling. Like the universe, or okay, maybe just my gut, was trying to tell me something. "Don't go," it said. "Something's off." But being me, I shrugged it off. I thought, it'll be fine. Chloe's with me, and we're just going to have fun, right? What's the worst that can happen? Famous last words, right? Anyway, I drove over to the house, which, by the way, is still like the most nondescript place ever. You'd never guess what was happening behind that door. It's one of those houses that looks normal, well on the outside. You wouldn't suspect a thing unless you were invited. So when I walked in, I was met with the usual warm greetings and happy vibes. You know the drill by now. A bunch of friendly faces, smiling people, and a lot of champagne being handed around. Honestly, it lifted my mood right away. There's this one guy, let's call him Tom, who always seems to be at these things. Every time I've gone I spot him and, I get why people are drawn to him. He's the type who can wear a simple shirt and jeans and still look like he stepped out of a men's magazine. Tall, dark hair, jawline that could cut glass, and a smile that makes you think, okay, maybe this time will be different. I mean, I won't lie, I did notice him. How could I not? He was kind of everything I like. Tall, fit, confident without being overbearing, and honestly he knew how to talk to people. And here's the kicker, I had a boyfriend. A real boyfriend. And I loved him, really I did. So, while I was admiring Tom from a distance, I wasn't exactly going to throw myself into the deep end, if you know what I mean. Tom was a great option for fun if I was single, but I wasn't. And that's the problem with these things. Everyone's looking for fun, but what if you're already happy with someone else? Where do you draw the line? And so that you don't hate me, my boyfriend knows that I go to these parties. Anyway, moving on from my internal crisis about Tom's perfectly sculpted face, because seriously it was starting to get distracting, Chloe and I sat down in our usual circle with a couple of other people, and the conversation flowed. And, of course, there was more wine. For the atmosphere. Honestly, how do they always know when you need that extra glass to loosen up? It's like they have a sixth sense or something. Before long, things shifted, as they always do at these parties. There was this unspoken moment when everyone kind of relaxed, if you know what I mean. It's like the mood in the room just snapped into something different, and it wasn't awkward anymore. No one was asking questions, no one was worried. People were just there and enjoying themselves. To be honest, it was actually really nice. I felt like I was in this bubble of calm. The pressure to do anything was gone, and I found myself laughing and joking, just talking about the most random things. At some point, the group just naturally started to shift. There's no big announcement or moment when it happens. It's just this organic thing where everyone seems to get comfortable enough with each other that the boundaries blur, and, well, everyone starts touching each other more casually. This part is always strange to explain, but it wasn't like it was forced or anything. It was just how things went. Everyone was still respectful, but there was this energy in the room, and like it or not, it was contagious. Chloe and I, as usual, stayed close. I'm not sure why, but I always felt more at ease when she was around. Maybe because, despite everything, I still needed that security blanket. Sure, things were casual and fun, but, come on, this kind of thing can get weird, and having someone you trust right next to you is everything. Chloe got it, and she never pushed me. We just stayed together, laughing and chatting with the others the way we always did. But here's the kicker. Even though I felt comfortable, like, okay, maybe I could get into this, I couldn't help but notice this gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. Like I said earlier, there was something that didn't quite sit right, but it wasn't enough to make me walk out. I told myself it was just me overthinking it. And honestly, after a couple more glasses of wine, I did start enjoying myself. The touches weren't so weird anymore, the conversations were easy, and, well, I was feeling a little more loose than usual. Okay, so let's get into the moment I remember most clearly. The wine was flowing, the conversation was light, and I was trying to just go with the flow, you know? It's like I had hit that sweet spot where things felt good but weren't too intense. The music was still playing softly in the background, and everyone was talking, laughing. But then, well, then something happened. I was lying down just in that space where everything felt easy, relaxed, and, let's say, more good than usual. I was very comfortable with the group I was with, and everything was going fine. Until I noticed something that made me pause for a second. I felt this odd sensation in my pelvic area. It was subtle at first, but it definitely felt like something was leaking. Now, I'm not usually the type to get freaked out about stuff like that, especially since, things were a little more casual in these situations. Figured whatever. Maybe it's just me being paranoid, or maybe it was just a little too much wine. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. So, like any chill person in my position, I casually asked the guy I was with, "Are you okay?" Because let's be honest, if something's off, you're supposed to check in, right? I wanted to make sure everything was fine. He smiled at me, totally chill, and said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He seemed so relaxed about it, so I figured, okay, nothing to worry about. But deep down I couldn't shake the thought, what the heck just happened? Now here's where my mind started to spiral a bit. I started thinking about the whole situation. I mean, I'd done this before, right? This wasn't my first time at this kind of party, and I knew what to expect. So why was I suddenly feeling a little off? I tried to brush it off, figuring it was just the whole weird energy of the night getting to me. Maybe I was overthinking it. I got up after a bit and decided it was time to call it a night. Chloe, as usual, was in her own little world, doing her thing and not even slightly concerned about anything. She was just, lying back, relaxing and getting a little high with some friends. It was totally her vibe. She was in her element, and me, I was kind of ready to just head home and go to sleep. So I told her I was going to leave. "Wait a few more minutes," Chloe said, barely looking up. "I'll be right behind you." I rolled my eyes, thinking, sure, Chloe, I'll be waiting for you in the car while you finish your moment of zen. But hey, that's Chloe. She's always been that person who could be in a room full of chaos and somehow be completely unbothered. So there I was, standing around, waiting for her to get her act together. And I felt this strange sensation again. It was a bit different this time, though. Like something was gently touching my pelvis, but in a way that wasn't super obvious. It wasn't anything that screamed emergency, but it was enough for me to be like, what the heck? Still, I shrugged it off. After all, I wasn't exactly new to this, and my body had been in weird situations before. It was nothing I couldn't handle. When I finally left, I went home, took a long shower to rinse off the night's chaos, and hit the bed. I was honestly so tired that I didn't even think twice about the weird sensations I'd been feeling earlier. I just needed to sleep. The next few days I felt fine, totally normal. I was busy with work, running errands, just doing my thing. And for a while, I didn't even think about the party again. Everything seemed fine. But then, on the 5th day after the party, it started. I woke up feeling off, like something wasn't right. At first, I thought I was just exhausted. Maybe I'd caught some kind of bug or something, or maybe I'd eaten something weird the night before. You know how it goes. You get this feeling like your stomach is suddenly doing somersaults for no apparent reason. I didn't pay much attention to it at first. I just brushed it off. Maybe it was just something I ate. Maybe I'd accidentally overdid it with the wine and had a little too much of the wrong foods. But as the day went on, I felt worse. My stomach was uneasy, and I was starting to feel a little dizzy. You know that feeling when you start to think, okay, I might have been poisoned by something, but I can't figure out what? That was exactly where I was at that moment. I tried to tell myself it wasn't anything serious. Maybe I had food poisoning or was just run down from the week. But deep down, I had this nagging suspicion that it wasn't just a random illness. Something felt off. And that, my friends, is where the story starts to get a little strange. So, like I was saying, after a few days of feeling absolutely terrible, it started to get really old. The constant nausea, the random bouts of vomiting, and just an overall feeling of, why the heck do I feel like I'm dying? Yeah, it wasn't exactly how I imagined spending my days. I thought maybe it was just a bug or something, but after a couple of days I started to get really frustrated. Like, is this some kind of cosmic joke? Am I the punchline of a very cruel prank? I told Chloe about how I'd been feeling, and she, being Chloe, didn't even flinch. Her reaction was so casual. I swear I thought she was about to suggest I had a cold or something. But no, Chloe, in her infinite wisdom, hit me with this gem. Maybe you're pregnant. I swear I just stared at her like she'd grown a third head. I laughed it off and said, no way, Chloe. There's no way that's happening. Not me. But then, as the days passed and I got sicker, I couldn't help but wonder. What if? That one weird feeling. I couldn't stop thinking about it. When I felt that leakage thing happen. It was so gross, but also, now it seemed like it was connected. But still, I wasn't buying it. I wasn't that person, right? So what did I do? I went and bought not one but 3 pregnancy tests. Because apparently that's what you do when you're having an emotional breakdown and need answers. And guess what? They all showed that I was not pregnant. I stared at the tests, feeling this mix of relief and weird frustration. I mean, great, I wasn't pregnant, but I still felt like garbage. And that was frustrating. I thought, well, this is just wonderful. I spent all that money on these tests and still no answers. Then, on the 10th day, yes, the 10th day of me being sick, I finally decided that I should probably see a doctor. I mean, at this point I was over it. I needed answers, because it was getting to the point where I couldn't even eat a decent meal without running to the bathroom to throw up. Not fun, let me tell you. So I made an appointment and dragged myself to the doctor's office, feeling like a complete mess. I was exhausted, and I had a feeling I was about to get an answer I wasn't ready for. I walked into the clinic, looking like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards, and they immediately took me in. They ran a few tests, asked a ton of questions, and honestly I just wanted them to give me the magic pill that would fix everything. But then came the moment I'll never forget. The doctor came back with the results, and as soon as she said, "Everything points to pregnancy," my heart sank. I swear I almost fainted right there. Pregnancy? No way. No freaking way. It was like the room spun around me. I felt the blood drain from my face, and I had this overwhelming urge to just run out of there. I looked at the doctor, trying to make sense of it all. "Are you sure?" I asked, even though I could already feel my whole world shifting around me. She nodded and said, "I'm afraid so. The tests are showing positive results, and the symptoms all point in the same direction." Could hardly breathe. My mind was racing, but everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. My boyfriend sitting beside me didn't even process it at first. Then suddenly his face lit up, and I could see the excitement in his eyes. He started talking about how he was going to be a dad, how this was amazing, and how we were going to have a family. His excitement was genuine, and honestly I wanted to be happy too. But deep down I was just crushed. I barely held it together. I could feel the tears threatening to spill, and I didn't know how to handle it. I wasn't ready for this. I hadn't planned for this. In fact, it felt like everything I had been avoiding, the thing I didn't want to happen, was coming true. Remember that feeling I mentioned earlier? When I knew something was off. That was it. That's when it hit me. The weird sensation, the leak I felt at the party, the vibe that something wasn't right. It all made sense now. I didn't cry in front of the doctor, but when we left the clinic, it was a whole different story. I could barely keep it together, and by the time I got to the car, the tears started to flow. I felt like I was in a bad dream. Everything was upside down. I knew I needed to talk to Chloe. I needed to talk to someone who would understand. So I called her and she immediately picked up. I didn't even say anything, I just started crying. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Hey, I'm pregnant," I choked out, my voice trembling. Her response was immediate. "I'm coming over now." And just like that, Chloe and I made our way to the house of the guy who had been at that party with me, the guy I had felt that weird sensation with. I couldn't quite explain why I was going there, but somehow it felt like the right thing to do. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I needed answers. And I wasn't going to stop until I had them. After I found out about the pregnancy and had that emotional breakdown in the car with Chloe, we both knew we needed to confront the guy. I mean, he was part of this mess, and I had a feeling that things needed to be put on the table. So, with a heavy heart and honestly a bit of shaky confidence, we drove to his house. It was one of those moments where I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream, cry, or both. But what was I supposed to do? I had to face this head-on. When we walked in, the first thing I noticed was the look on his face. He immediately went pale when he saw us. We sat down, and he didn't even try to deny it. He admitted everything almost too quickly. And here's where it got really interesting. This guy, who I thought was some casual party dude, almost cried. Like tears welling up in his eyes. Chloe, being the absolute queen that she is, looked at him like she was about to set the world on fire. She didn't even hesitate. I didn't even know Chloe had that side to her. But there it was. This guy, who had been so chill about everything until now, finally cracked. He told us he was willing to take responsibility for the child if it came to that. He even said, "I can't get my girlfriend pregnant. We've been trying and it's not happening. So if she can't, I'll take care of this one." That right there hit me. My mind was trying to process everything. On the one hand, part of me felt, well, relieved. At least he wasn't going to completely disappear into the ether, which had been a fear of mine. But on the other hand, I realized just how complicated this situation had become. This wasn't just some random fling at a party. It was real life, and everything had just gotten 10 times more complicated than I had ever expected. So there it was. The guy said he'd take care of the kid, and I was somehow supposed to feel okay with that. My head was spinning. But deep down I just needed to exhale. I really did. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel comforted or panicked. Honestly, I was just exhausted. And I think in that moment Chloe could tell. She was like, "All right, let's go. You've heard what you needed to hear." I had my answer. But I still felt unsettled. I couldn't shake the feeling of how my life had just flipped so suddenly. All I wanted was to go home and sleep for about a year. Then came the fun part. I had to break the news to my boyfriend. Boy. I honestly dreaded it, but I couldn't avoid it. So I called him. And, of course, his reaction was exactly what I expected. He was furious. I tried to explain, but honestly, I don't think he was hearing any of it. He yelled at me for what felt like an eternity, telling me how disrespectful I was and how stupid I had been. The things he said stung, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel that a part of me was relieved to be out of that relationship. It wasn't just about the pregnancy. It was the fact that I had been living in this weird, passive-aggressive tension for so long. It wasn't healthy, and we both knew it. The breakup happened fast. There were tears, angry words, and a lot of silence after that. But now, looking back, I realized that was probably the best thing for both of us. Sometimes things just run their course, and maybe it was time for me to figure out who I really was. So, I ended it, and for a while it was hard. But now we're back together. It's complicated, of course, and I've learned a lot of lessons from all of this. Lessons I never thought I'd have to learn. I've realized that some parties are just not worth attending. And there are some things in life that you can't just go with the flow on. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, but the aftermath, not always fun. I won't be going to any more swinger parties, that's for sure. I've got my boundaries now, and I'm sticking to them. As for Chloe, well, she's still going. Not gonna lie, I kind of admire her confidence. She knows what she wants, and she's unapologetic about it. We're still best friends, though, and I'm learning to accept that her choices are hers, and mine are mine. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing. We just move on with life. Now, as I'm writing this, I want to remind all of you that you don't have to go through life making the same mistakes others do. Learn from what I've been through, so you don't end up in a similar situation where you're left to pick up the pieces. If you want to hear more uncensored stories, then go to Patreon. I'll be posting content there that I can't post anywhere else, so check it out if you want to dive deeper into the chaos that is my life. Thanks for reading, and remember, learn from other people's mistakes. Because believe me, they can be really bad.